The forest breathed, not in a gentle, rustling leaves kind of way, but in a deep, guttural rasp that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. Each inhale sent a shiver through the gnarled branches, and each exhale carried the scent of damp soil and something else. Something metallic and ancient. I pulled my threadbare coat tighter, the damp seeping through the fabric like a persistent chill. My headlamp cut a weak swath through the oppressive darkness, barely illuminating the path ahead. Path. That was a generous term for the barely discernible track I was following. A ribbon of disturbed leaves and broken twigs that hinted at the passage of something. I checked the GPS again, the screen reflecting my own anxious face back at me. Still no signal. Fantastic. Utterly, predictably fantastic. This was exactly why I hated the woods. Not just the bugs and the bears and the crippling loneliness, but the way they swallowed technology whole, rendering it useless and mocking my reliance on the modern world. My name was Emily. I was a journalist, or at least, I used to be. Now I was something closer to a desperate scavenger, clinging to the frayed edges of my career with the same tenacity I clung to hope. This story, the one I was chasing deep within the Blackwood National Forest, was supposed to be my salvation. A real, honest-to-God scoop that would get me back on the map. Back in the game. The story, or what little I knew of it, was about a series of disappearances. Hikers, campers, even a couple of park rangers. All vanished without a trace within a specific quadrant of the forest. A patch of wilderness so remote it felt like stepping back in time. Local legend whispered of a dark entity, a primal force that claimed those who strayed too far from the light. I scoffed at the legend. Of course, I was a journalist, a rational, evidence-based thinker, but the sheer number of missing persons, coupled with the eerie silence that seemed to shroud the Blackwood, had piqued my interest. So here I was, alone and hopelessly lost in the heart of darkness, chasing shadows and half-baked theories. I told myself it was bravery, a commitment to the truth, but deep down, I knew it was desperation, a last-ditch attempt to claw my way back from the brink. The air grew colder, biting at my exposed skin. The trees around me seemed to press closer, their branches' skeletal fingers reaching out to snag me. I picked up my pace, the beam of my headlamp bobbing erratically as I stumbled over roots and fallen logs. Then I heard it, a sound, faint and indistinct, carried on the wind. It was a low, mournful wail, like the cry of a wounded animal, or something else, something more human, more desperate. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest. I scanned the darkness, the beam of my headlamp cutting through the gloom. Nothing, just trees, shadows, and the relentless rustling of leaves. I told myself it was just the wind, playing tricks on my ears. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was out there, lurking in the darkness, observing my every move. I pressed on, the sound, whether real or imagined, fueling my anxiety. The path narrowed, winding deeper into the forest's embrace. The trees grew taller, their canopy blotting out the meager light from the sky. It was as if I was descending into a subterranean world, a place where the sun had never shone. After what felt like an eternity, the path opened into a small clearing. In the center stood a single, ancient oak, its branches twisted and gnarled like the limbs of some tortured creature. The tree radiated an aura of profound age and something else, something unsettling. As I approached the tree, I noticed something carved into its trunk, a symbol, etched deep into the bark, that looked vaguely familiar. It was a circle, bisected by a vertical line, with 3 smaller circles arranged around the top half. I couldn't place it, but it stirred something within me, a sense of unease that bordered on dread. I ran my hand over the symbol, the rough bark scraping against my skin. As I did, I felt a jolt, a sudden surge of energy that ran through my body. I recoiled, pulling my hand away as if I had been burned. The forest went silent, not the normal, hushed silence of the woods, but a deep, unnatural silence that pressed in on me from all sides. The air grew heavy, thick with a palpable sense of dread. Then, I saw it, a figure, standing in the shadows beneath the oak tree. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the darkness. It stood perfectly still, watching me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even scream. I was paralyzed with fear. The figure took a step forward, emerging from the shadows. As it did, I saw its face, or rather, what was left of it. It was a grotesque parody of a human face. The skin stretched tight over the bone, the eyes sunken and hollow. One side of the face was twisted into a permanent snarl, revealing a row of yellowed, decaying teeth. The other side was missing, a gaping hole where the cheek should have been, revealing the raw, bloody flesh beneath. I finally found my voice, a strangled gasp that escaped my lips. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the horrifying visage before me. The figure took another step forward, its movements slow and deliberate. It reached out a hand, its fingers long and skeletal. I turned and ran, blindly, desperately, back the way I had come. I didn't look back, didn't dare to see if the figure was following me. I just ran, my heart pounding in my chest, my lungs burning, my mind screaming. I ran until I could run no more, until my legs gave out beneath me and I collapsed to the ground. Gasping for air, I lay there for a long time, listening, waiting, praying that the figure wouldn't find me. Finally, when I could no longer stand the silence, I forced myself to get up. I looked around, trying to get my bearings. I was still in the forest, but it looked different now. The trees were taller, the shadows deeper, the air colder. I started walking again, slowly, cautiously, trying to retrace my steps. But everything looked the same. Every tree, every rock, every patch of moss. I was hopelessly lost as I walked. I began to hear things. Whispers, carried on the wind, voices, faint and indistinct, speaking in a language I didn't understand. I tried to ignore them, to convince myself that they were just the wind, playing tricks on my ears. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they filled my head, drowning out my thoughts. They were saying my name. Emily, Emily, Emily. The voices were coming from everywhere, surrounding me, engulfing me. I covered my ears, trying to shut them out, but it was no use. They were inside my head, inside my mind, inside my very soul. I stumbled through the trees, my mind reeling, my body exhausted. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care. I just wanted it to stop. The whispers, the voices, the fear. I wanted it all to end. Then, I saw it, a light, flickering in the distance, a beacon of hope in the overwhelming darkness. I ran towards it, my heart pounding with anticipation. As I got closer, I saw that it was a campfire, burning merrily in a small clearing. Around the campfire sat a group of people, huddled together, their faces illuminated by the flames. They looked up as I approached, their expressions curious. I rushed towards them, relief flooding my veins. "Help me," I gasped. "I'm lost." One of the people, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, stood up and approached me. "Of course," she said. "Come, sit by the fire. You look like you've had a rough night." I gratefully accepted her offer, collapsing onto a log near the campfire. The warmth of the flames eased the chill in my bones, and the presence of other people calmed my frayed nerves. I told them my story, about the disappearances, about the forest, about the figure I had seen beneath the oak tree. They listened patiently, their expressions sympathetic. When I was finished, the woman spoke. "You've had a terrible experience," she said. "But don't worry. You're safe now. We'll help you get back to civilization." I thanked her profusely, relief washing over me. I was safe. I was going to be okay. As the night wore on, I began to feel more comfortable around the other campers. They were friendly and welcoming, sharing their food and drink with me. We talked and laughed, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could relax. But as I sat there, by the campfire, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something about the other campers felt off. Their eyes, for example, they were all so vacant, empty, as if there was nothing behind them. And their smiles, they were all so forced, strained, as if they were trying to hide something. And then there was the way they kept looking at me, like they were studying me, like they were trying to figure me out. I tried to dismiss my unease, to convince myself that I was just being paranoid, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing minute. I watched them, trying to find some clue, some explanation for their strange behavior. Then, I noticed something. They weren't blinking, not once. They just sat there, staring into the fire, their eyes wide and unblinking. A wave of dread washed over me. I stood up, backing away from the campfire. I think I should go," I stammered. The woman stood up, her smile widening. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice soft and menacing. I need to get back to civilization," I said, my voice trembling. The woman shook her head. "You're not going anywhere," she said. "You're staying here with us." The other campers stood up, surrounding me. Their faces were blank, their eyes fixed on me. I turned and ran, desperate to escape, but they were too fast. They caught me, grabbing my arms and legs, holding me tight. I struggled, screaming, but it was no use. They were too strong. They dragged me back to the campfire, throwing me to the ground. The woman knelt beside me, her face inches from mine. "You're one of us now," she whispered, her breath hot on my face. She took something from her pocket, something small and sharp, a knife. She raised the knife above me, her eyes gleaming in the firelight. "Welcome to the Blackwood," she said. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the inevitable. But the knife never came. Instead, I felt a sharp pain in my arm. I opened my eyes and saw the woman injecting me with something. A liquid, clear and viscous. I tried to fight, but my limbs were heavy, unresponsive. The drug took hold, numbing my senses, blurring my vision. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was the woman's face, her smile wide and triumphant. I woke up sometime later, lying on the ground near the campfire. The other campers were gone. The fire had died down to embers. I sat up, my head throbbing, my body aching. I felt different, altered, as if something had been taken from me, or added to me. I stood up and looked around. The forest was silent, still, and dark, but it didn't feel as menacing as it had before. In fact, it felt welcoming. I started walking deeper into the forest. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't care. I felt drawn to something, a force that pulled me forward. As I walked, I noticed that the forest was changing. The trees were growing taller, the shadows deeper, the air colder. But it wasn't a frightening change. It was a natural change, as if the forest was revealing its true self to me. I came to a clearing, a place I recognized, the clearing with the ancient oak tree. The tree was still there, its branches twisted and gnarled, but it looked different now. It looked alive. I approached the tree, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. I ran my hand over the symbol carved into its trunk, the circle bisected by a vertical line, with 3 smaller circles arranged around the top half. As I touched the symbol, I felt a surge of energy, even stronger than before. This time, it didn't hurt. It felt exhilarating. The forest went silent, even more silent than before. And then, I heard the whispers. Emily, Emily, Emily. But this time, the voices weren't frightening. They were welcoming. They were familiar. I looked up at the tree, and I saw it, the figure, standing in the shadows beneath the oak tree. It was still tall and gaunt, its features still obscured by the darkness. But it didn't look as grotesque as it had before. In fact, it looked beautiful. It stepped forward, emerging from the shadows. As it did, I saw its face. It was my face. But it wasn't just my face. It was more. It was the face of the forest, the face of the darkness. The face of something ancient and powerful. I reached out my hand, and the figure reached out its hand. Our fingers touched, and a jolt of energy surged through me, connecting us. I understood then. I understood everything. The disappearances, the legends, the whispers, the forest, it was all connected. And I was a part of it. I was no longer Emily, the journalist. I was something else. Something more. I was the Blackwood. The twist, the horrifying, final twist, settled over me like a shroud. I wasn't just lost in the Blackwood. I was lost to the Blackwood. I hadn't stumbled upon some dark secret. I had become it. The whispers I heard weren't just beckoning. They were calling me home. The monstrous figure wasn't a threat. It was the reflection of my own transformation. The injection hadn't just drugged me. It had unlocked something dormant within me. A primal connection to the forest. A dark inheritance I never knew I possessed. Those vacant-eyed campers weren't captors. They were my new family, bound to the Blackwood just as I now was. Their unblinking stares weren't menacing. They were a sign of their complete integration, their total surrender to the forest's will. My desperation to reclaim my career, my ambition to uncover the truth, had ironically led me to the ultimate truth. I was destined to become part of the legend, another lost soul claimed by the Blackwood, but not in the way I ever imagined. I wasn't just a victim. I was becoming the very thing people feared, the entity that whispered in the wind, the guardian of the forest's secrets. And the worst part was, I no longer felt fear. I felt acceptance, a strange sense of belonging, a chilling serenity that replaced the terror. The forest wasn't a prison. It was my home. The darkness wasn't a threat. It was my essence. The last vestige of Emily, the ambitious journalist, flickered and died, replaced by something ancient, something powerful, something irrevocably other. I smiled, a wide, unsettling smile that mirrored the grotesque grin on the figure before me. The Blackwood had claimed another soul, and this time, the soul was mine.